Hi, my name is Sage, and this week I'm gonna make a turnt turnip. So my turnip's gonna have some headphones and some sunglasses because he's just getting turnt. Ooh. Ignore the doodles of like the pumpkin and the ant and the dinosaur and the snake. I just felt like doodling as well. But now I'm gonna need some tin foil and I'm gonna fold it up real nice before I start scrunching it all up. And now I got a tin foil ball, bam! It is now a clay ball, yay! Next I get my scissors and I don't really cut the wire, I kinda nick it before I then snap it. Next I bend the wire and bam! They are now legs. But then I take a thinner wire and wrap that around the thicker one, as this will give the clay something to grab onto rather than it sliding off the smooth surface of the thick wire. I forget where I learned this tip, but it is so nice to learn because I didn't know about this, and now I don't need to wrap everything in tinfoil all the time. Anyway, he's now gonna get some feet. But just like everything else I make, one of them is bigger than the other. As you can see here, like, what is that? So I rip the big one off and then whip some clay off of that and smush it around, put it back on and realized I hate that one too. Take that one off, try again, and bam! Third time's the charm. Next, I take the giant sphere and smush it up top the legs, and now he's standing, and it's on an angle. And this totally is not foreshadowing for what happens in the future. Next, I take some clay and I smush it on his leg because it's looking a little thin before then blending the legs more to the turn-up body. But then I get distracted and decided, you know what his feet needs? Some more clay. And so I add that before then blending everything out with my ball stylus. I then run the ball stylus up and down on his legs to give it more of like a rooty feel, because I want his legs to look like roots, but not really, because he needs to stand up so they can't be tapered. Hence, thick feet. Everyone knows you can't get turnt without thick feet if you're a turnip. That's a wild sentence. I then poke 2 holes in his head for his eyes, and I'm not giving him any eyeballs. Instead, I'm giving him some sunglasses. You may be like, were those brows? No, they're glasses. And then I make some lenses, and by lenses, I mean I make 1, and then bam! Now there's 2! Next, I take my ball stylus and blend everything together while also smoothing everything out. And then, not to bore y'all, I take more clay and then I blend it out some more. And I do that with a cutscene. Bam! Woo! Now you got thick glasses. So now that my turnip is really looking to turn up, I gotta make him some arms. And you may be like, Sage, dude, what do you mean you're making him arms? In the thumbnail, he didn't have any arms. I know that, and you know that. But this version of me did not know that. So the arms are gonna be coming on and off for the next little bit. Until I decide, you know what? Turnt turnips, in fact, do not need any arms. They can get turnt without arms. But as of right now, he's getting some arms. But then I ripped them off because I realized, you know what, he needs headphones and his arms are in the way. So I take some tin foil and smush it up and I make 2 small rounds before then covering them with clay and bam! These are the big chunky parts of the headphones. And next I take my ball stylus and run it along the edges of the big chunky parts to give them some texture, and then I put them on each side of his head and smush them in, and that's how I attach them because that just made sense in my brain. They honestly don't fall off either. I did a good job. I was proud of me. And now I'm taking some wire and I'm gonna make the part that attaches the headphones out of the wire, but then I realized this wire is too long, so then I cut it again and I eyeball the measurements because I don't do math. Second time is good enough. That's what I told myself. And so I cover the thicker wire with the thinner one before then covering with clay, and now I attach the headband part to the earpieces so they're looking like really big chunky headphones. And this is where I debate whether I'm gonna add the arms again or not, and then I do, but don't get attached. Before then realizing, you know what, I am gonna make the leaves out of clay rather than paper because I just think that's fun. And so I start by cutting off 3 little wire pieces, and it's because I think I'm gonna make 3 leaves, but I don't. I only make 1. But anyway, so I then use one little wire piece and wrap a thinner piece around it before then making a giant loop at the top, as this will be like the leafy carnivorous part. I think that's what it's called. Don't quote me. But then I wrap the wire contraption with some clay and it's looking like a leaf now, which honestly shocked me. I didn't know if this was gonna work or not because the wire is so flimsy at the top, and I ended up taking some clay that I didn't really mold or anything. I kind of just flattened it out and the edges are all like frayed, but I wanted them to look frayed because the leaves kind of look a little bit frayed in real life. But I think it looks pretty good. I then attach it to his head by just blending it all together, and now he's Leaf Head. But I'm now seeing that Leaf Head is getting a little too turnt. He's a little wobbly. So I add some more clay to his feet, thinking that is going to solve the problem, because why wouldn't it? I then blend out his feet with my ball stylus because obviously I'm adding some more clay, but I'm still noticing he's a little wobbly still. So I'm thinking, what if I just add his arms back and it will balance him? That's a genius idea. And I do that and it doesn't balance him out at all. But you remember the 3 wires that I cut and I used one of them? I'm gonna use the other 2 and I wrap those in the thinner wire and push them into the back of his feet so I can then cover them with clay. And I'm thinking this will help him balance, because why wouldn't it? You know, I'm giving him more of a base. And you know what? It didn't work. But I am determined to try and make it work. So I start taking my ball stylus and blending it out even more because that's obviously gonna help. But then I ignore my problems and give him a smile instead with my pointy stylus. And now one of his arms are falling off. So I just remove it and then I remove the other one. But I don't stop there. I also removed the back part of his feet that I attached to try and make him balance more, because I'm like, you know what? This isn't working. But now it seems he's sturdier for some reason. Which I do not understand. I am very confused. But I do a little bit more blending on his feet before then realizing I am just tweaking some stuff here and there, and wha-bam! This is now what he's gonna look like before he goes into the oven. And I'm thinking he looks pretty sturdy right now, right? And then I put him into the oven and this happens. He fell over. But he fell backwards instead of forwards, which really confused me, but I was happy about it. It's just because he got too turnt in the oven. That's what I'm telling myself. And he can still stand up on his feet, so I am pretty happy. And now I get to paint his sunglasses black, which is fun. I like the color black, and black shades are a vibe. After that, I begin to paint his headphones a blue color, and I've used this blue color before, and it's always super thin when it first comes out, and it's gonna take a lot of layers, but I really wanted an electric blue, because obviously this turnip is electrifying, ooh, but since I'm gonna have to do a couple of layers and that's not really fun to watch, cutscene, well bam, he now has a couple of layers, but I am not happy with these layers because they are still not layering properly in my mind. So I mix some white and some blue together and start going over what I just did with that. It's not really electric blue anymore, but it is cute, so I keep it. Next, I start to paint him purple. So for the top of his head, I go in with a regular purple color, no blending, but for the midsection, I take a little bit more white and purple and mix that together, so it's kind of blending lighter at the bottom, but then I take even more purple and put that on my brush to make the top a little bit darker, just so everything kind of looks a little bit more blended together, until I go to the bottom of the turnip and I use more white than I do purple. So basically here I'm just blending everything out and hoping it works out, and it did. I was shocked. And next I just paint the front of his face white because his shades are in the way of the blend. But now I'm going to be painting his legs / roots brown, and I use an umber brown, but I do notice that their roots are kind of a little bit lighter, so once I go in with the umber brown, I then go in with white when it's still wet, so it's kind of like a blended whitish browny color. Next, I paint his leaf green. I know, shocker. But for the stem of the leaf, I do use a blend of white and green because I noticed that it goes from light to dark in the pictures that I googled of turnips. I'm now going to do a couple more layers of paint off screen so he can look super turnt, and well bam, this is what he looks like. I now have to make him look like he can drop the beat. And to do that, I'm going to add some musical notes onto his headphones. And to do that, I use a super thin tipped Posca just to draw on the musical notes on each side of his headphones, and I also do an outline of the headphones as well. And that's pretty much my craft of my Turnt Turnip. I would like to say thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And now it's time for the glamour shots.